Hello, my name is Ynzo and I'm the Choco Evangelist of a formerly small Dutch chocolate company called Tony's Chocolonely. And today I'd like to tell you the story about the bitter reality behind the sweet story of chocolate, which unfortunately still exists in the industry today. I'm going to tell you about Tony's Chocolonely, about what we do as a company, about how we do things as a company, but mostly why we even came to exist as a company. I'm going to take you through this story and tell you all about chocolate and the reality behind it. Chocolate, I often say, is the solution to everything. I mean, if you're having a crappy week, there's nothing better to fix a crappy week than ending the week with a big bar of chocolate. Or maybe you're having a great week, then there's nothing better to celebrate a great week than a big bar of chocolate. So let me tell you this story. The reality is that cocoa grows around the equator. There's a little bit of cocoa that comes from Asia. There's a bit of cocoa that comes from South America, where originally cocoa comes from. But the majority of cocoa nowadays is grown on millions of tiny farms in Western Africa. These are 1, 2, 3, maximum 4 hectare size family-run businesses. Millions of those. The other side of the value chain is billions of consumers like you and me who just want to be able to munch down on a bar of chocolate every single day in your life without feeling any sense of guilt. In the middle of the value chain, there's only a handful of companies that actually produce chocolate from cocoa. And it's in the interest of these companies that the price of cocoa remains low. In our opinion, that price is inhumanly low. Because how does that look? Of a bar of chocolate that's sold in the stores for, say, €2.80, not much more than 15 or 16 euro cents go to the farmer that grows that cocoa. So that's not much more than 5.5 or 6% of the retail price. And that leads to the typical cocoa farmer in Ivory Coast and his family members to live of about 72 euro cents, or about 79 cents of available income per person per day, which is way below the extreme poverty level for a country like Ivory Coast, let alone the living income level. And we think that value chain is very unequally divided. Now, how does that look? 2 countries in Western Africa, Ghana and Ivory Coast, produce at least 60% of all cocoa in the whole wide world. And that is grown on about 2.5 million farms in Ghana and Ivory Coast alone. And on those farms, there's 2.3 million children that work there, of which 90% work under illegal circumstances. And that's not only illegal according to the International Labour Organization, but also illegal according to local law, and that's important to know. So that means that these kids work with heavy machinery, work with chemicals, walk around with big sharp machetes, or at the age of 6, 7 or 8, walk around with bags of cocoa beans that weigh 60 kilos per bag. And in the very worst case, at least 30,000 children are subject to something that we call modern slavery. So these are kids that do unpaid work in forced circumstances and in very bad circumstances. And we think that is ridiculous. These are kids that sometimes are lured from neighboring countries like Burkina Faso under false pretenses like you're going to be able to send home some money, we're going to educate you to become a cocoa farmer. But these kids sometimes even disappear in that industry. Now, these are statistics, but let me show you a little movie of a couple of these kids.
Je suis Kamsame Félix, j'ai 16 ans. J'ai travaillé dans une plantation de cacao de 1999 en 2003.
Je m'appelle Kamkoy Herman, j'ai 18 ans. J'ai travaillé à la plantation de cacao 1999 en 2003.
Je m'appelle Kam Touré, j'ai 18 ans. J'étais travaillé dans la plantation en 99.
Je n'étais pas payé. J'étais forcé de travailler.
J'étais forcé de travailler. Je n'avais pas la liberté pour quitter l'école.
On ne m'a pas payé, on m'a forcé de travailler.
Et puis on vous laisse jamais causer entre parents. Si on te voit causer avec ton parent, bon, on te tue ou bien tu te mates très bien là et puis on te fait changer de compte.
C'est fini, madame?
Now, if you realize that in the middle of that value chain, there's only a handful of companies that, in our opinion, are responsible for the problem in the cocoa industry, you could also reason that that problem is easily solved, right? If it's only a handful of companies that need to change their ways. And in 2001, there were two American senators that came to the same realization. And Senator Harkin and Senator Engel set up the Harkin and Engel Protocol to eradicate the worst forms of child labor from the value chain of cocoa within 5 years' time. And the Harkin and Engel Protocol was signed by all of the big chocolate firms in the middle of that value chain that I just described. And then you think, you're there. But unfortunately, the Harkin and Engel Protocol was and is a so-called non-binding agreement. And it shows because now, 20 years down the line, none of the goals in the Harkin and Engel Protocol have been achieved. In 2005, there was a Dutch television show called Keuringsdienst van Waarde, which is more or less the equivalent of the 60 Minutes of Food or the Food CIA, so an investigative journalistic program looking at the reality behind some forms of food marketing. And the journalist Teun van de Keuken was shocked when he realized that in 5 years' time, almost at the end of the first term of the Harkin and Engel Protocol, nothing had changed in the cocoa industry. Even worse, nothing had been actually done towards change in the cocoa industry. But Teun had an issue because Teun is a television journalist and none of these big players wanted to speak to him on camera. So Teun came up with the smart move. Teun bought 10 different bars of different brands of which he was sure that somewhere in the value chain there had been forced child labor. And Teun put a camera on himself and he took a bite of each of those bars. And he called the international alarm number, saying, "I want to turn myself in as a chocolate criminal." Now it was quiet on the other end of the line. They don't get these phone calls every day. So Teun explained. Teun said, according to international law, if you're aware of criminal activities in a value chain of a product that you buy, you make yourself complicit to those criminal activities. So by buying and consuming chocolate, of which I know that there's forced child labor in that value chain, I make myself complicit to that financing of modern slavery. And that is illegal, so you have to come and arrest me. Well, Teun wasn't being taken seriously, so Teun hired an expensive lawyer and had a court case set up against himself. Which was a brilliant move, because if he would have sued one of these big players, he would not even get to a court case. And in this case, they could only stand by and watch what the verdict of the judge would be. Unfortunately, after a lengthy pre-trial, the judge said, "Mr. van de Keuken, morally you're completely right, but legally I can't prosecute you, because I cannot prove the causality, the direct relationship between the bars that were picked by Cam Herman from the movie, who you just saw, and the chocolate that you ate." So Teun didn't have the court sentence that he was looking for, and he didn't have the television footage that he was looking for. So Teun said, you know what, I'll change that industry from within. And Teun launched his own little chocolate company, Tony's Chocolonely. Tony's, the international name for Teun, and Chocolonely for his lonely battle in the chocolate industry. A small company, but with a huge mission. To not only make our own chocolate 100% slave-free, but to make all chocolate worldwide 100% slave-free. And Teun had 5,000 chocolate bars made, thinking he could run a business on a stock of 5,000 chocolate bars. Well, here's a little clip of the very first day that we launched.
Ja, goedemiddag.
Goedemiddag, is dit Alain de Laat?
Jawel,
Meneer de Laat, u spreekt met Teun van de Keuken uit Nederland.
jawel.
Weet u nog wie ik ben?
Ja, ik weet wie u bent.
Nou, ik heb een tijdje geleden bij u allemaal chocola gekocht, hè?
Ja, dat klopt.
En we zijn vanochtend begonnen met de verkoop.
Ja?
En u moet eens even raden hoeveel we er hebben verkocht.
Oh, 1000?
13.000.
13.000?
Ja.
Oei, dan hebt u een probleem, hè?
Ja, dan heb ik een probleem, ja.
Yes, we had a problem, but obviously it was a positive problem. Apparently, people were looking for something to indulge themselves while still being able to do something good for the world and the society around them. Now, we're really proud of the fact that we can say that we became market leaders in the Netherlands in a very short time frame, outdoing all traditional competition. And for the people that are familiar with Tony's, it won't be a surprise that our best-selling chocolate bar, or the best-selling chocolate bar in the Netherlands, is the caramel sea salt chocolate bar, outselling all competition, and it sells more than twice the amount of the next best-selling chocolate bar, which fortunately is our milk chocolate bar. But even though we became market leaders in the Netherlands and are now available in Scandinavia, Finland, Germany, Belgium, France, the UK and the US and more exotic places in the world and pretty soon in the whole galaxy, we're still really believing holding on to that culture of a small company. Because a wise woman, Anita Roddick, the founder of The Body Shop, who died way too young, already once said, if you think something small can't make a difference, try sharing your room with a mosquito. And we're the mosquito in the room of the chocolate business, constantly buzzing in the back of their ears, sometimes stinging and hopefully keeping them awake at night like a proper mosquito should be doing. Now, how do we think we can reach that humongous mission of 100% slave-free chocolate worldwide? The very first step is simply to create awareness. To create awareness amongst chocolate consumers about the bitter reality that still exists in the cocoa industry today. Because we are convinced that when consumers and retailers simply hand in hand ask more questions about what they put in their shopping baskets or what they put up on their shelves, that the producers of these goods will have to start feeling that pressure and will have to change their ways. We actively search for those consumers that we call our serious friends. So those are people that not just buy our chocolate because they like our chocolate, which is great in itself, not just buy our chocolate because they want to support our mission, but that actively spread that mission amongst family and friends. We call those people our serious friends, so our ambassadors. Now, where do we find our serious friends? Well, for example, in the heart of Amsterdam, we opened the Superstore, a tiny chocolate store where we sell chocolate bars, but where we also have a machine where you can make more than 22,000 different combinations of Tony's bars with your own packaging, your own wrappers and everything. And some people call this a very commercial enterprise, which is fine because we are commercial, but these people forget the beautiful historical fact that our store is literally situated 2 floors down from the place where for hundreds of years cocoa beans were traded. Because that store, that location was and is the first stock exchange in the world. Now that store wasn't crazy enough for us, so last year we decided we want to open our own factory. And we bought the place already at the outskirts of Amsterdam, and we want to have that factory not just to make chocolate, but to really be able to show the world where cocoa beans come from, how chocolate is made, and what problems exist in the cocoa industry. So for us, it's still about creating awareness. So we said we want to have 500,000 people come to our factory per year. Now, 500,000 people coming anywhere in the Netherlands means you're amongst the top 15 tourist attractions of the Netherlands. So we asked our most trusted advisors, how do we get so many people to a boring factory? And our most trusted advisors are our own kids. And they said, Dad, maybe if you have a roller coaster go through your factory, you're going to get those people to the factory. So we're actually building a roller coaster that goes through our factories and hopefully even through our office. That's all work in progress still. Hopefully we open it next year. This awareness we want to create to up the pressure on the governments of the US and the individual governments of the members of the European Union to make sure that organizations really abide by laws that have to do with respecting human rights in your value chain. And if they're not there, to put those laws in place and to make sure that people adhere to these human rights. The second step in our strategy is that we want to show the industry that chocolate can be made in a different way. In a more social way, in a more sustainable way, in our opinion, simply in a better way. And how? By following the recipe for slave-free cocoa or our 5 steps in our sourcing principles. Of which the most important one is to take responsibility for your full value chain. So that means full transparency in your value chain and traceability of where your resources come from. So we now work with more than 6,500 farmers in Ghana and Ivory Coast. And why Ghana and Ivory Coast? Because the problem of forced child labor simply is the biggest in those 2 countries. And we want to solve the problem where the problem exists instead of going around the problem. So we work with these farmers that are united in 7 cooperatives to have this long-term relationship with these farmers. And why is that so relevant? Because in that case we can pay a higher price directly to those farmers in the beginning of the value chain. So on top of the farm gate price that is established by the governments of Ghana and Ivory Coast, we pay another 20% fair trade premium, and on top of that we pay about a 20 to 50% additional Tony's premium towards the living income reference price to make sure that these farmers actually earn that living income. which simply means that they can afford a roof over their head, they can feed their whole family, send their kids to school, which we find essential, and hopefully invest a little bit in a positive spiral upwards. So we help them to increase the productivity on their farms, we help them to increase the quality of their cocoa beans, we also help them to form a stronger stand towards the buyers in the middle of the value chain that I spoke to you about. The last step in our strategy is that we want other companies to simply blatantly copy what we're doing, which means our business model, our value chain. Now we're really proud to say that last year we could say that Albert Heijn, the biggest retailer in the Netherlands, now sources their cocoa beans through the same 5 principles. And together with Albert Heijn and Barry Callebaut, who produces the chocolate for both of us, we started the Tony's Open Chain platform, where we actively invite other retailers and other chocolate producers to join the Tony's Open Chain platform to work through the same 5 sourcing principles, to make sure that we all work towards 100% slave-free chocolate worldwide. Now, we could have become an NGO. We could have become an activist. We actively chose to become a commercial chocolate company, changing that system from within. And some people might call us a social enterprise, which is fine by me, because for us, financial success isn't the goal. For us, financial success, don't get me wrong, we're commercial as hell, but financial success is simply a means towards the goal. The goal is crystal clear, 100% slave-free chocolate worldwide. But I'm starting to oppose calling ourselves a social enterprise because we simply believe that normal, regular entrepreneurs simply need to make sure that when they are financially successful, they need to realize they have a moral obligation towards the world around them to do something good for that planet and the society around them. We always say we're crazy about chocolate or we're serious about people. Now we're pretty damn crazy about chocolate. I mean, 15 years ago in the Netherlands, you had 4 types of chocolate: white, milk, dark, and something with nuts sprinkled into it. We have about 25 to 30 recipes, rotating recipes, seasonal recipes, seems to keep enticing and satisfying the taste buds of our consumers. Now, crazy about chocolate, and anytime you walk into our office, the first thing you see is Ava and Bas in our kitchen coming up with the craziest recipes. But we're serious about people. And in our list of serious about people, number 1, we put our own team, which might sound slightly narcissistic, but we strongly believe that we can only reach that humongous goal of 100% slave-free chocolate worldwide by having the most committed and engaged team you can imagine. So we work on a serious subject, we try to make that work as fun as possible. So in your contract, when you work at Tony's, it specifically states that you can bring home as much chocolate as you can physically carry, each and every day. And to keep that slightly within boundaries, you get free running shoes every year, we do yoga together, we do boot camps together, we have the most delicious vegetarian lunches in the office, because on number 1, it's our own team. On number 2, obviously, those more than 6,500 farmers that we work with directly in Ghana and Ivory Coast alone. And before I sound like some kind of marketing guru, bear in mind that 6,500 farmers isn't 0.5% yet of the 2.5 million farms that I mentioned earlier on in my presentation. So unfortunately, we're still a drop in the ocean, but hopefully we're going to change that soon. On number 3 is the consumers, the people that actually eat our bars. And number 4, the retailers, so the stores that sell our bars. And number 5, our suppliers, like Barry Callebaut. We often say we're not a chocolate maker, we're an impact maker through the way of chocolate. Callebaut makes our chocolate. Now, if you hear this story about how unequally divided the world of cocoa and chocolate has always been, isn't it surprising that chocolate bars for the last decades or maybe even centuries have always had this perfectly divided, very boring, almost Excel spreadsheet kind of shape? And very boring chocolate companies might even put their own brand name on each and every individual block in that bar, just to make sure that consumers might forget their brand name halfway through eating that bar. We thought that was a bit weird. So we made our bars unequally divided. And I can tell you, in the first few weeks, we had hell to pay. The phone was ringing constantly, the inbox was exploding. There was this epic complaint by a mother who sent us an email saying, "My kids used to live in perfect harmony. You guys come up with this unequally divided bar and this bickering every day." We tried to get in touch with each and every of these people that had a complaint to explain why we had made our bars unequally divided. Because our bars tell the story of the unequally divided chocolate industry in its purest form. Our bars actually become a discussion piece. If you open a bar of Tony's at the dinner table next to somebody who doesn't know this story, you're bound to have to tell this story, because that person next to you will ask you, why is that bar so unequally divided? And why is that relevant? Because we never paid a single cent to advertising or paid media. It's all been word of mouth so far. Not too many people know, though, that we managed to hide the map of Western Africa in our bars, showing the origin of our cocoa beans and the pride we have in working with these strong farmers in Ghana and Ivory Coast alone. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is how we believe a small company can make a dent in a rusted down industry, in our case, the chocolate industry. Because we're convinced that we can make our chocolate 100% slave-free. But that is not what we are about. It's about making chocolate 100% slave-free worldwide, together with the rest of the industry, together with consumers, together with governments, together with farmers, etc. Because together we can make chocolate 100% slave-free.
Het is toch het bewijs dat je wel het verschil kan maken.
Je moet ergens beginnen. Je moet niet nadenken. Je moet gewoon beginnen. Iedereen kan gewoon zijn eigen Tony zijn. Dat is natuurlijk ook het verhaal van deze reep.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to leave you with the wise words from a French guy called Jean-Paul Sartre, who once said, once you know something, you cannot unknow something. And once you know something and you're aware, you're responsible. And when you're responsible, it's upon you to act upon that responsibility. So the very next time you find yourself in a supermarket, in front of that chocolate shelf, or any shelf for that matter, realize that each and every purchase you make, each and every decision you make, each and every business decision you make is a vote for the world you want to live in yourself. Thank you very much.